welcome to the Cultivating Calmness Podcast. My name is Kaela Vance, and today I want to jump into the topic of AA and 12-step recovery programs. And I want to talk a little bit about that because I recently hosted a luncheon, which I do once a month, every month. And our most recent presenter was Michelle Risser, and she is a local therapist who also does a lot of consultation and help with CEUs and as a CEU provider, and she has a lot of knowledge on the 12-step recovery programs, and she was able to share that with our audience this past week. And I was excited to learn about it because although I am aware of the 12-step recovery program, usually known more commonly as AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, I still learned a lot of information about it, and more specifically the 12 steps. So I want to kind of review those for you, especially for those of you who are unaware of what a 12-step recovery program is, and kind of what the basis there is. I'm not going to go into all the detail. That's her presentation. But I just want to share a little bit about what I learned, and as a therapist, and if you're a therapist out there, or even a friend of somebody who may be in AA or trying to abstain from alcohol or some other drug or some other thing that is hard for them, this could help you as well in being able to support them. So I think that was the biggest takeaway for me, is that, it's not just staying away from the alcohol or drug or thing of choice. That is a big piece of it, but there's more involved. And so we can support our friends, our clients through that, even if that is not something that is our specialty or something that we have a whole lot of knowledge of. We can be empathic to our friends, and we can, show that we care in different ways. So that's kind of where I wanted to go with today's talk. So if you're still with me, AA, stands for Alcoholics Anonymous, and there are lots of other 12-step programs out there. You have probably heard of some of them, and then there are some that are probably not well known at all and may have very limited meetings, but or groups to go to support them, but they are out there. And so some of those ones that she shared with us, she had a long list. I'm not going to go over all of them. You've probably heard of Al-Anon or Alateen. Those are groups for people who have family members who have an addiction or a problem area, and they get support in those groups just as their family member may get support in something like AA. And you don't have to, your family member does not have to be going to a program or be in the 12 steps and acknowledge their addiction for you to be a part of that. So that was something that I learned. There's Codependence Anonymous, Nicotine Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Food Addicts Anonymous, Online Gambling, Gamblers Anonymous, Sexual Recovery Anonymous, etc. There's all kinds of groups out there, some that you probably heard of, some that you probably haven't, and those all follow the same 12 steps. And then there's other like non-12 step programs out there. So some people are not into the 12 steps. That's also something that I learned, which I wasn't really aware of, that I think a lot of people feel or think that AA or these 12-step programs are based off of a specific relationship to like a Christian God. And although it was, started in that fashion, the idea is that you find your spiritual belief or higher power, and it's having a belief in some kind of higher power, not necessarily the Christian God that Christians believe in, but a God or a something that is greater than yourself. And some examples were given as far as like what people consider to be higher or greater than themselves. So even, atheists can believe that there's something greater or bigger there out there than themselves. The idea being like, what's the point if there's nothing bigger, greater out there than just us? So that was something that I learned, and I think can be helpful for people, especially my clients, if that is something they're going through. And I've had clients who have told me like, AA isn't for me, I don't like the religious piece, like that's, not my thing. I don't want anything to do with that. So now as a therapist, knowing this information, I can better equip them to understand what maybe that is, what's actually going on there, what that actually means, and for them to potentially give it a try. I'm not going to force anybody to do AA if they don't want to, but at least I can give them more accurate information that could help them, get through that. So there's all kinds of I guess there's a difference between traditions and then the 12 steps, which I didn't know. So there's traditions within AA. I'm not going to go over those, but one that stood out to me that I was unaware of that came up, and I guess this is usually found out more through like celebrity like issues or concerns versus, us normal people who don't have any kind of celebrity status or connection, but that I want to make sure I say it right. That the policy, the public relations policy for AA is on attraction rather than promotion. So they want to always maintain personal anonymity on the level of press, radio, and films. So where, and I don't remember the celebrity like has gotten in trouble, is where they've talked about their AA like in an interview, and that's, I guess, not okay. You can talk to your family, you can talk to your friends, you can talk about your AA experience in that way, but to then put it on the radio or to put it on TV, I guess is more advertising than it is like an attraction, right? Like that I've talked about it, word of mouth, and you like that idea and you come, right? Versus me selling a product. So I guess that's like the biggest difference, is that we're not trying to sell AA, but we want you to want to be there and to want to come. Although we know that there are programs out there that require, people to attend AA as far as like maybe court related issues or concerns. So, but that's, still a little different. So, lots of slogans, phrases, things that come up to help people get through this process. The biggest one, primary one is like one day at a time. But those are things that we can use just in a regular, normal everyday basis. But these often come up with those who are in AA and working the 12 steps, is that they use these slogans to help them get through maybe some more difficult times. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of jump into these like 12 steps. So 12 steps are a process that you go through in AA to essentially like come to terms, accept, and follow through with and maintain your sobriety. And like it's that acknowledgement of like where that come from, the powerlessness that you have against your alcoholism. And I'm going to reference alcoholism here, but this can go across any addiction and any of those other 12-step programs. But it did start with AA, and all the other programs kind of built off of that. So that's what I'm going to reference when I talk about it. But it can you can relate that across the line to any of these other programs. So it's also then recognizing your character defects, the things that got you to where you are. Are there things that you used to do or that you're currently doing that are getting in the way of your healing and that aren't helpful for you? And then there's that big piece I think many of us know or are aware of, and that's the making amends pieces. And then the maintenance, doing it every day and sticking with it. And So I just want to kind of briefly go over those 12 steps. Again, I learned a lot in these 12 steps. I wasn't aware of each of these things specifically in movies and television and talking to people. And, I've learned generally what these steps were. But I like going to these luncheons. Even though I host the luncheons, I like learning about them. So even though I'm helping to arrange them and set them up and I can see the slides ahead of time and all things like that, I still try to have a general sense of like learning about this information from the presenter. And so that's what I did, and I was able to take everything in, and I found it to be really helpful. And I hope you find these things helpful too, and how you can use this information to help your clients and your family or your friends. So there's the step one, right, is that admitting we're powerless over our addiction. So that's knowing that there's nothing we can do to control that, essentially. Step two is believing that there is a power greater than ourselves. So again, I mentioned that before. It doesn't have to be the God. It could be a God, your God. It could be a tree, it could be science, it could be, there's lots of options as far as like what power, what thing, what something in the universe you feel is greater than you. And that can stem from like your family of origin or people around you, or you've gone through that process. And that's why some people don't like AA, is because they feel like it's maybe more religiously based, and there are prayers involved. Again, it can be to your higher power and not like the God that I believe in. So I think that's a big misconception. That was a big piece that I didn't even realize. So I'm glad that I learned that, and I can help others to understand that if that's needed. Step three is that you've made the decision. You made the decision to kind of turn your life over to that higher power, and that we understand, what he wants for us. And so again, we talk about God in that way, and it did come from like a Christian base. However, it doesn't have to be a Christian based belief, although I can see why it would be like that. And that was a big discussion in our in the presentation, is that some people, do feel that way. So they'll bring in, specifically like God and Jesus and things like that to their meetings, which may turn other people off. And I think in general, it's good to be able to hear other perspectives. That doesn't mean you have to believe in that yourself. But can you take what somebody is saying and generalize it across like your belief system, or just understand that that's what works for them, but what works for you may be different, and you both can attend the same meeting and talk about different things, but have that general understanding and acceptance that, hey, we're all here for the same reason and the same purpose. We just look at it in a slightly different way. So I think, that's a good way to help people understand that these steps and how that might be different. So I'm told that step 4 is usually one of the hardest steps. So as a clinician, if you have a client going through the 12 steps, that step 4 can be really difficult, because that is where they are asked or tasked with kind of taking a inventory of themselves. So searching, kind of going through their whole life and writing out an inventory of all of their like traumas, wrongdoings, relationships, patterns, things like that. And so that can be really triggering to, remember maybe some of the abuse or the trauma you've experienced, which may have led to your addiction. And in my opinion, any person I've ever worked with or seen that has an addiction has, some kind of trauma, and big or small, right? We look at people and we think, well, nothing big happened to them. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to be something big. In working with trauma, they could be just lots of little things that happen over time that get you to where you're at. So recognizing that trauma history, recognizing the patterns that show up in your life, the people that maybe you have harmed along the way. And so as a therapist and as a friend, we want to support people through that process, because it can be really hard to look back on all the dark days areas of our lives, and try to come out on the other side of that. So that's where people will start to maybe relapse, because that can be just a really triggering and upsetting time. And so then step 5 is admitting to God, ourselves, and other human beings, the nature of our wrongs. So that's like telling their story, admitting their part in things, paying attention to their patterns, owning up to past mistakes. So it's kind of acknowledging that out in the open to someone. So that could be a therapist, it could be a friend, it could be someone you have wronged or harmed. It could be, at a meeting. That's my understanding. So I could be getting some of this wrong, but this is just my recollection and kind of resharing some of what I learned in this to help you. So step 6 is we're ready to have God remove all the defects of our character. So we're willing to do things different and accept our flaws, is what that step is. So that's like that in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or the that's the wrong chart. That's when we're talking about stages of change, right? We're in that readiness stage, right? Like I have seen the pattern, I know the pattern, I know I need to do something different, I'm ready to do something different, and then there's action, like I am doing something different, right? That's where we're moving into action phase, action steps. Step 7 is to humbly ask Him, God, our higher power, to remove our shortcomings. So there's a prayer that is usually said, and that's one of those prayers is the serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So that is a big prayer said within AA. I happen to know that prayer not from AA, but that was a prayer that my mom had put on her gravestone. So that is on the back of her gravestone, where she's buried. So I have always known that from the time that I was little, not related to AA. That was a poem and a prayer that she wanted and enjoyed. So step 8 is, this is that amends piece. It's making a list of all the people we have harmed, and became willing to make amends with them all. So that is where they're going out and they're taking those steps and they're making that contact to apologize and recognize, hey, this is what I did, and I'm sorry. And I think that can be, step 8 and 9. So step 8 is making a list. And then step 9 is actually doing the amends. And so the doing the amends can have like multiple layers. So again, if you have a friend or a client that may be coming to you to make amends, it can be helpful for them if you're able to accept their apology. You don't have to, if you don't, that's on you. And that's okay. They have to accept that as well. But they're doing their part in recognizing wrongs that have occurred because of their actions and behaviors. Step 10, so part of step 9 is also, I think, recognizing like who you should and shouldn't make amends to, right? Is it going to cause more harm for that person, for you to maybe show up in their life again, or to have to have a part in their life? So maybe your amends is more of like a letter that's written and unsent. But you write it down and you kind of do the actions without actually going to the person, because going to the person could cause more harm than good. So that's an important step to recognize if you have somebody going through that there may be things that they maybe shouldn't go and do. And what are those things? Steps 10 through 12 are kind of in that recovery and that sobriety stage. So you continue step 10 to take more of that inventory, and recognizing, are there any other things that I've done or continue to do, and trying to take more of that active responsibility. One of the phrases that was used is that you keep your side of the street clean. So whatever everybody else is doing, I don't know, but I'm going to make sure that my stuff is clean, my stuff is good, and that I'm doing the right things. So step 11 is that, I believe, and I might get these mixed up. Step 11 and 12, one is like saying a prayer and doing something at night, and the other is doing something in the morning. So prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying for knowledge and his will for us and the powers, and his power to carry that out. So I believe that's the one that's done at night. And then step 12 is having that spiritual awakening, because of the, 12 steps, and practicing them, every day, saying a prayer, trying to work on them, recognizing where there may be issues, where you may have struggles, so that you can continue on working your steps and finding the support that you may need. So again, quick overview of the 12 steps. As a friend or as a therapist, it's kind of knowing what step they're in and knowing maybe what the challenges are going to be because of each step and how to help them through that. And if you have other questions or you want more information, there are lots of websites out there, but the AA website is one that you can go to specifically to get all of that information. There are daily meetings, every day, all around the country, all around the world, which was actually started here in Ohio. I learned that as well, and actually pretty close to where I am as far as I think that's what she said, and that's pretty cool. So something else I learned in this process. So take this information, I hope you can use it in your practice or in your life. And if you are currently struggling, with an addiction, there is support, there is help out there. The 12-step programs are out there and helpful, but if that is not for you, that's okay. There are other programs out there, like Smart Recovery, Refugee Recovery, Life Ring, Secular Recovery, Moderation Management, Recovery Dharma, Women for Sobriety, Celebrate Recovery. Some of them may work 12 steps into those, but they aren't generally based off of a 12-step program. There are options out there. There are treatment facilities to, detox and go to rehab and to come out sober, and then having that support when you're done with that process, that is something that you are needing to go to and to go through. If you're interested if you're a mental health professional in the central Ohio-ish area, I have had people come from further away. You're more than welcome to come. I host CEU luncheons now because Michelle Risser is actually a CEU provider and is able to approve CEUs. So that's great. If you're looking to have that for your program, reach out to her and she can hook you up and get that, available to more people. So I am glad to be offering luncheons this year where we're able to give CEUs. So there's a small fee for that if you are getting CEUs. But other than that, it's a great opportunity to learn something new from other clinicians in the area. Maybe this will guide you in finding a modality or finding a topic area that you can learn more about or that you find interest in, and maybe you want to be trained in that as well. And it's a good way to network. So I like meeting other clinicians, talking with them. When you're in private practice, it can be kind of isolating. That's the reason I started these luncheons, was to be able to connect with other clinicians out there, not just myself or the one or two people I may run into or speak to regularly. So that's why I do them. Up here in the next few months, we have a few other presenters. I have on, I believe it's March 20th. They are the third Thursday of every month, from 11 to 1 in Dublin. And so I believe that's the 20th. I think I have the date right. So March 20th, we're going to have Nicholas Bolton, and he's going to be presenting on reclaiming the present, healing trauma through body awareness. That's basically somatic experiencing. That is something that he is thoroughly trained in. And that's what his past practice is based in. And then in April, on the 17th, we have Mandy Pearson. She is going to be presenting on Brain Spotting Essentials from Trauma Recovery to Personal Growth. And in May, on the 15th, we have Jonathan Miller. He's presenting on If Junior High Was a Diagnosis. I love the title, and that's based on social anxiety. And then coming up here over the next couple months, we have something around ADHD and art and grief and functional medicine. Is it just woo-woo? Those are ones that I know are in the works, not officially nailed down, but we have some dates in mind and still have a few dates open. So if you're listening to this and you would like to present at one of these luncheons, and you have a topic that you think people would be interested in, I would be happy to hear it. Please reach out and we can get you on for sometime this year or potentially even looking into next year. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will talk with you again next week.